Good day to you, wherever you are watching from. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Humilani, and I would be putting you through an introduction on types of experimental design. And the context of my discussion will be mainly for those in humanities, education, social sciences mainly. Um, the type of experimental designs. Normally, the research we do in social sciences and humanities basically is divided into three. We have the qualitative approach, using the quantitative approach, and using the qualitative approach, as it were. And we have the mixed method approach to carrying out research. That means the one that integrates both the qualitative and the quantitative research approaches to carrying out research. However, I would love to start by saying that the quantitative approach is guided by the fact that the data gathered are usually estimated in terms of numbers, starting from frequency count, mean, and some other descriptive or inferential statistics, as it were. So it is very important that we know that that is where we are coming from. And when a research is quantitative approach is used in a research, it is possible that uh, there are two possibilities. We can use the experimental designs to execute the research and non-experimental design. But in this video, we'll be dealing with the experimental designs, which is actually adopted to the humanities from core science. In an experimental design, the planning majorly is that the subjects are actually um, assigned to treatment. That means there is nothing like group being assigned to treatment, but it is the individual subjects from the sample uh, that is actually assigned to treatment, as it were, in experimental research, such that every participant has equal chances to be in the control and the experimental group, as it were. That is the major thing about it. You can see the image here. We have the sample is already taken. Now, from that sample, we will now randomly assign the individual to the treatment and control group. This is from the population where we have many people. We selected sample, and from the sample selected, the individual were randomly assigned to the treatment group. You can see that the brightness of the color in the control group, they are very bright ones, and the dark one is the first, and all of that. So it's just random. It is very important we learn that about the experimental research. There's random assignment of participants. And the beauty of experimental research is that it ensures reliability and validity. It controls for bias and helps determine causality. In experimental research, the researcher is actually able to argue for causality, while in the non-experimental research, it may not be possible to argue for causality. as it were. Right. So um, there are three types of experimental design, which I would mention. The first one is the pre-experimental design. And in the pre-experimental design, what usually happens is that the participants in pre-experimental design, the researcher rather, may decide not to actually uh, have a control. And this one is called the one-shot case study. In the one-shot case study, the researcher can take a treatment. It could be a drug, it could be a social intervention, it could be an individual intervention, and he administer it to a group of people. And after administering them, to them, um, he will post-test them to check the effect of that without a pretest. A person using one-shot case study is not interested in the status of the participants before the treatment is administered. No. Then we have another one in the pre-experimental design. We have the one group pre-test, post-test design. In this particular design, what we are actually doing is that there's just a group, and that group is actually pre-tested. Afterwards, the treatment is administered and there is no control. Then after that, there is a post-test that is administered. And when the post-test is administered, the difference between what is obtained previously in the pre-test and the post-test informs the data analysis. And we have the static group comparison. Here, there is something like a control group, but it is not actually a control because the two groups results are, there's a pre-test, but the purpose is just not to compare, but rather to actually, it's just to compare, not to see the effect of a particular treatment. These are pre-experimental designs, three of them in that category. And it is very important that we note that these are not good experimental design. Then we have the true experimental design. The true experimental design, it's that type of design that allows for random assignment and there is control group. The first one, there's nothing like random assignment in the pre-experimental, and there is no control group in the case study and one-shot pre-test, post-test, as it were. So next to this, we will be talking about the types of the true experiment. There are many, but for the purpose of this video, I will talk about the post-test only control group, pre-test, post-test control group, Solomon 4 design, and time series design, as it were. I want to first make a distinction between the pre-test, post-test uh, design and post-test only, just like the word. If you look at the slide, you will see that there is RA, there is RB. So those RA and RB signifies the treatment and the control. So you will see O1A subscript O subscript 1A for RA line and XE O subscript 2A. That's the pretest. O subscript 1A is the pretest. It's like observation 1. When the doctor, before the doctor administer a drug, let's say they observe the person, then after the drug was administered, they observe again. It may be students also, before teaching them, their attitude, to English language is observed through a test or a questionnaire, then the treatment is administered. Then we have the O2A, which is the post test. Then we have the RB, which is O1B and O2B. In that one, you will see that there is no XE. In the true science, they always put a placebo. That means uh, the point is that the group that is control will have something that is not the treatment so that we can compare. So that's what is obtainable in the pre-test, post-test design. But in the post-test only design, we have something different because there is no pre-test. You can see there is nothing in RC and RD. All we have is this X subscript E, which signifies the treatment, and we have the O2C, which is the observation, and we have RD, which is O2D, which is the observation of the control. So that is the difference between the post-test control group and the pre-test, post-test control group experimental design. This pre-test control group is widely used in the core sciences, and the participants are randomly assigned to treatment. The control group will not have the treatment while the experimental group has it. There's a pre-test that will be conducted, and after the pre-test, there will also be a post-test, as it were. Now, the Solomon 4, I will not deal with it now. I will deal with it when I get to the quasi-experimental research. But this is the time series experimental design. You will discover that in this slide, we have O1, O2, O3, O4. Those are for observation, and we have X, which is the treatment. Then we have O5, O6, and on like that. So what it means is that the group that is exposed to the treatment were pre-tested 4 times at interval. Then the treatment was administered, which is the X, and the O5 is the post test, and O6 is another post test, just to check improvement and all of that. Then the control group did not have, as it were. So that's the time series design. Now, the ones that I have not discussed, I will discuss it in the quasi experimental. And the quasi experimental research design is actually the research design that is used in the education and in humanities, where it is very difficult to assign participants to treatment. In other words, you have a treatment which is a teaching strategy. When you get to school, you may not be able to divide the school in the classroom into four or into two, so that some students will go to one class, another one, you will be disrupting. So in this type of quasi experimental research design, the disruption is not actually uh, the is not actually permitted. So the students will be in their classroom, and everybody in a single classroom as a group is assigned to a treatment. So when they are assigned to that treatment, you will now begin to teach there. There's another group that has a control, so they will not be aware. So at the end of the experiment, we will now be able to compare, as it were, the difference between the difference between the two groups. So, this is the reason why we have the type of design that is quasi. So it's saying that it is not a very true experiment. and we usually work with the existing group like the classroom. The execution is that there will be a pre-test to determine the student knowledge, achievement, interest, emotional intelligence. Pre-tests will be administered for both the treatment and the control group. Then when it comes to the treatment, it's only one group that will take it. For example, let's say we want to use snake and ladder game to teach students counting, and after that the other group will not get snake and ladder game, they will get the pre-test. Then after the end, the two groups will get the post-test. So as a result of this, we will now be able to compare the results. There will be another video on data analysis that is suitable for several of these research approach. So I want to dwell on the Solomon 4, and the Solomon 4 research design is to actually remove the effect of testing, as it were, to remove the effect of testing or being exposed to the pre-test. So in this type of Solomon 4, which I'm explaining here, this the researcher picks two schools. Maybe uh, in the first school, there are two arms of the GSS1, and it is possible to do in the first group, the researcher will administer the pre-test, do intervention, and do a post-test, as it were. Then in the GS2, GS1B, it's possible for the researcher to just do the pre-test and the post-test, no intervention, no intervention. In the second school where we have GS1A, the researcher can do only intervention without pre-test now, as you are saying it, then they will do a post-test. And in the last school, we will now have, in the last classroom, we will now have a post-test alone, no intervention. So you can see that we are removing something until we got one. Here we have one, two, three is complete. Here we just removed intervention. Here we have intervention with post-test. Here we have post-test alone. We just want to check whether is the intervention that is working. So when we get the data, we will now have four groups of mean and we will examine it. In some instances, some researcher can do intervention with post-test. That means they will just do uh, group 1 and group 3, pre-test, intervention, post-test, intervention, post-test, and they will compare the results, as it were. But this is the perfect example of the Solomon 4 research design, as it were. Next to this is the factorial designs, which we also use in education sector, because apart from the teaching strategies that we usually consider in education, other factors usually moderate the effect of a teaching strategy, such as gender, emotional intelligence, and many other things that are actually not truly considered um, in the treatment. So for us to take care of them, we do the factorial design. The slide here is a factorial design. You know, the researcher want to determine the effect of treatment, which is at three levels: learning together, constructive controversy, and conventional method. The participants are students, and the students are male and female. The person doing this research also wants to check whether gender has influence on the effect of the treatment. That means the male benefit more than female, or female benefit more than male. Then the person is also interested in the learning style of the participant. Is somebody with visual, auditory, reading, kinesthetics benefiting more from the treatment? So this type of research factoring in is also pre-test, post-test, quasi-experimental, but it is not only the treatment that we are considering. We are considering moderator variables, as it were. And I want to talk about the crossover or counterbalance design. These participants receive all treatment. What I have, what we have done in the ones that we have described so far is that there's actually a compartment between the treatments. If you are in the control group, you will not get what is taking place in the experimental group. If you are in the experimental group, you will not know what is taking place in the control group. But this type of research, which is used to reduce variability and increase precision, every group gets the treatments. Let's say we have three treatments: um, cooperative teaching, project learning, and experiential learning (ABC). So group one, they will be pre-tested, and they will get this teaching strategy, then post-test them. After a while, they will teach them with another teaching strategy B, post-test them, teach them with teaching strategy C, post-test them, wait for a while and do a general post-test. Group two, they reversed it. They first gave them A, they gave them C, they gave them B, and they post-test. After A, they will do a post-test. After C, they do a post-test. After B, they do a post-test. They can wait again. Group C, they rearrange it to BAC, and there are actually post-tests within the circumstance that we have described, as it were. Look at group 4. The arrangement is that they had B first, and they had C, they had A. Look at this one. They had C, group 5. Then after C, they had A, they had B. Instead of taking group 5 to have just one treatment, it's just the order. And they want to check whether there will be a significant difference among the group in this counterbalance design. It is usually not used in education, as it were. So that's the video. So in this video, in summary, we have discussed types of experimental research design, and we have seen the pre-experimental design, the post-experimental, the true experimental design, the quasi-experimental design, characterized by assignment of of treatment to group, not the group to treatment, not that individual are assigned one to a treatment. So I would love to hear more from you, and take your questions in the chat room. Thank you very much for watching this video.